Hello to everyone listening from around the world. Before we get into today's account, I want to give a special shout out to someone who shows up for this community every single time. Josephine Chua, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Josephine, your comments keep this channel alive, and I mean that genuinely. Now, where are you listening from right now? Drop your country and your city in the comments below. I read every single one, and who knows, your name might be the one we call out next time. Today's account comes from Dave Allen, 68, who shared what happened when he woke from an 11-day coma to hear his wife giving instructions that would have ended his life, and spent the next 24 hours still in his hospital bed, quietly dismantling everything she had planned. This account has been dramatized to protect privacy. AI narration is used throughout. The experience it describes is real. The last thing Rita said before she believed I was lost was, "He never updated anything after the wedding. We have been waiting 2 years for this." She said it to her daughter Wendy. She said it in my hospital room. She said it while I was lying in the bed with my eyes closed, 11 days out of a cardiac event that had, by all medical accounts, been severe enough to kill me, and had chosen not to. The choice, apparently, was mine. I had been awake for approximately 23 minutes at that point, not the blurry, uncertain awareness that people describe when they talk about coming out of a coma. I mean genuinely, fully awake, oriented, aware of the room, the sounds, the antiseptic smell of the hospital, and the specific quality of the light through the window that told me it was mid-morning. I had been lying still, taking inventory of my own body, and listening to my wife explain to my doctor that my continued survival was not a priority. I kept my eyes closed. Don't move, don't breathe differently, just listen. My name is Dave Allen. I am 68 years old. I live in the Lincoln Square neighborhood on the north side of Chicago, in a house on Northwestern Avenue I have owned outright since 2009. I spent 31 years as a commercial insurance underwriter, the last 14 as a senior partner, and retired 4 years ago with a pension, a clean portfolio, and more patience than most people develop in a lifetime of quieter circumstances. Let me tell you how I ended up in that hospital bed. It was a Saturday morning in late September. I was standing at the kitchen counter reading the Tribune on my tablet when I felt a pressure in my chest I initially mistook for indigestion. It was not indigestion. Rita found me on the kitchen floor at approximately 7:40. She called 911 immediately. She stayed with me until the paramedics arrived. The ambulance took me to Northwestern Memorial Hospital on East Erie Street, which is where I had been for 11 days when this story begins. She saved my life on a Saturday morning. By the following Tuesday, she was calculating what it was worth. I was married for 26 years to a woman named Carol. Carol died of ovarian cancer in the spring of 2019, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. The grief of losing someone who has been the architecture of your daily life for a quarter century produces a particular vulnerability, a specific softness in the places that were previously defended by someone who knew you completely. Carol had 2 adult children from her first marriage. Her son, Greg Hartley, is 44. Her daughter, Nora Hartley, is 41. Both maintained a genuine relationship with me after Carol died, built across 26 years. They were, in the truest sense, my family. Rita found me 18 months after Carol died at a dinner in Evanston hosted by a mutual friend. She was warm and attentive and clearly interested in me in a way that felt, after 18 months of loss, like sunlight on cold ground. We dated for 8 months. We married in June of 2022. I did not update my will after the wedding. I am a man who spent 3 decades managing documented risk professionally, and I did not update my own will. The will still listed Carol by name, and removing her name from a legal document felt, at 67 years old and 18 months into grief, like something I was not yet ready to do. This is a human thing. Rita had done her research. She understood that it was a human thing, and she had been patient about it, in the way of someone who is confident that time is on their side. We have been waiting 2 years for this. I had been counting seconds with my eyes closed. I was past 1,000 and still counting when Wendy arrived. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story is already getting under your skin, do us one quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. Thank you, genuinely. The door opened at what I estimated was 20 minutes after the doctor left. 2 sets of footsteps. Rita's I knew. The second was heavier, more deliberate. Wendy is 31, Rita's daughter from her first marriage. "How long has he been like this?" Wendy asked. 11 days, Rita said. "The neurologist said the longer it goes, the less likely." "What did the doctor say this morning?" "He was unhelpful." They cannot do anything without a medical power of attorney, and I do not have documentation. What followed was the kind of conversation that people have when they believe they are alone with the unconscious. Not theater, a genuine logistical discussion. The house on Northwestern Avenue was in my name alone. The attorney's answer about probate claims had been nuanced. It depends on the will and the estate documents, and if he has not updated them, it gets complicated for us. The life insurance policy was the more urgent issue. $2.3 million, a 20-year term life policy set to expire on October 12th, 3 days away. The policy listed Carol's estate as beneficiary. Carol's estate had been dissolved in 2020, which meant no valid living beneficiary. In the event of my death before October 12th, proceeds would pass to my estate and be distributed according to my will, which still named Greg and Nora as primary beneficiaries. Not Rita. Not Wendy. Carol's children. The policy expires October 12th, Rita said. 3 days. If he does not survive before that date, the payout goes to Carol's estate structure and we receive nothing. If he does survive and we can get him to update the designation, can we update it ourselves? Wendy asked. The attorney said it requires his signature or medical power of attorney, which we do not have. Then we need him to either sign it or… Wendy stopped. Yes, Rita said. The words sat in the room like something physical. I kept counting. 31 years of insurance underwriting. You know exactly how to listen to a risk assessment. Keep counting. Keep listening. I lay still for 40 more minutes. I memorized the attorney's name. His office was in Skokie. I could not hold the account numbers, but I memorized the structure, the joint account, the policy, the expiration date, the firm downtown, and I memorized the phrase that sat above all of it like a title on a document. We have been waiting 2 years for this, and held that one without any difficulty at all. Some sentences do not require effort to remember, they remember themselves. At the end of 40 minutes, a knock came at the door. The nurse asked Rita and Wendy to step out for vitals. I heard 2 pairs of footsteps leaving, then quiet. I opened my eyes. The nurse was in her early 30s, dark hair, a name tag that said Michelle. She was looking at her tablet when she glanced at me, then looked again, and her hand stopped moving completely. Mr. Allen, she said, very quietly. Good morning, I told her. My voice was rough from disuse. I need 2 things, a glass of water and the hospital's patient legal advocate. I need to speak with that person before anyone is told I am awake. Can you arrange that? She processed something. I watched her arrive at a decision. Yes, she said carefully. In the waiting room down the hall, my wife and her daughter were waiting for me to die. In the bed, I was trying to remember the exact wording of Illinois' handwritten codicil requirements. I remembered. The hospital's patient legal advocate was a woman named Sandra. She arrived at 11:22, early 50s, silver-framed glasses with a legal pad and the particular quality of someone who knows how to let the person in the bed set the pace. Mr. Allen, Michelle told me you asked for the patient legal advocate. I am here. What do you need? I looked at her for a moment, assessing who was in the room. She held my look. That was enough. I need to make changes to my legal documents. Today. Before anyone outside this room knows I am awake. Sandra's pen moved. Tell me everything, she said. I told her I needed 3 things. A handwritten codicil, a beneficiary change on a life policy, and my attorney Paul Garrett contacted immediately. She found my phone, wrote Paul's number, and went to the hallway to make the call. That was the last quiet moment for the next 24 hours. Paul Garrett has been my attorney since 2003. When I call him with something unusual, he moves. Sandra called him at 11:47. He arrived at 1:15, looked at me in the bed and said, "How long have you been awake?" "Since this morning." "Sit down, Paul. We have work to do." I walked him through everything I had held on to. When I finished, he set his pen down. "You held all of that," he said, "coming out of 11 days under." I held what mattered. He nodded. The phrase, "We have been waiting 2 years for this." She said that out loud. Then we have intent. Documented and witnessed. That changes what we can do here significantly. He called his paralegal immediately to prepare an emergency account freeze motion. Sandra came back in with a second nurse, James, to join us as witness. She set her legal pad on my tray table. "It needs to be in my handwriting," I told her. "That is the legal requirement." Then use my pad. The pen is better than what is in the drawer. The codicil revoked every provision naming Rita Allen as a beneficiary. It reinstated Greg and Nora as primary beneficiaries of the estate and named Paul Garrett as executor. My handwriting was unsteady. 11 days produced a tremor, but it was legible. Every word was clear. Every word was mine. Signed, witnessed. Time on the document, 1:47 in the afternoon. The beneficiary designation change on the life insurance policy required the insurer's own form. Paul called the firm directly. They emailed the form to Sandra's hospital account within 20 minutes. I signed it at 2:11. The new primary beneficiary was Greg Hartley, Carol's son. Paul filed the completed form electronically at 2:19. He then explained that under Illinois law, a spouse who transfers marital funds in anticipation of a partner's death without consent may be subject to a dissipation of marital assets claim, and that we had a clear pattern of intent. We can file for annulment, he said, on grounds of fraudulent misrepresentation, that Rita misrepresented her financial situation before the marriage and entered it with the intent to use your estate to resolve personal debts. File it, I said. Annulment petition filed at 4:47 p.m., October 9th. The account freeze motion filed at 2:34. Temporary restraining order granted at 9:15 the following morning. That evening, a court reporter named Debbie took my full affidavit, notarized. Michelle brought soup from a kitchen that was technically closed. The same nurse who had kept my secret for 8 hours without once being asked. Thank you, Michelle, for all of it, not just the soup. Paul put on his jacket. Get some sleep. I ate the soup. I watched the amber grid of Chicago through the hospital window on a Wednesday evening and thought about Carol, specifically about the morning she sat at our kitchen table and helped me draft the original will. Her handwriting in the margins, her questions sharper than mine, her insistence we do it properly. She would have found the irony of this day either deeply satisfying or quietly unbearable, possibly both. For the first time in 11 days, I slept the sleep of a man who has done everything that needs to be done. If you have been listening to this and you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Because what happens the next morning, when Rita walks through that door and finds me eating scrambled eggs, is something you are going to want to hear. Subscribe. I will be here. October 10th, 7:47 in the morning. I was sitting up in bed eating scrambled eggs when the door opened. Paul was in the chair to my left. Sandra was standing near the window. The folder sat on my tray table, closed. Rita came through the door first. Gray coat, coffee from the lobby. She had not looked up when she pushed the door open. Wendy was directly behind her. They both stopped. I set my fork down deliberately. I looked at them. I took my time looking. Rita's stillness contained several things simultaneously. Surprise first, then calculation. The rapid assessment of a person who must now construct a new position in real time. Underneath both, briefly, something that might have been relief. I believe somewhere she was glad I was alive. The plan and the person had been running on separate tracks, and the person was briefly visible. Then the calculation came back. I picked up my fork and took a bite of scrambled eggs. Morning, I said. Paul presented the documents in order. The codicil first. Rita looked at it. Did not reach for it. The beneficiary designation changed second. Rita set her coffee cup on the floor with the deliberateness of someone managing a physical impulse. The account freeze motion third. $74,000. Transfers documented. Receiving accounts identified. Restraining order granted that morning at 9:15. You cannot, she began. The order was granted at 9:15 this morning, Paul said. Even, not unkind, simply accurate. The annulment petition last. Fraudulent misrepresentation, personal debts concealed, marriage entered with intent to use David Allen's estate. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when the last possible revision to the situation has been placed on the table. I finished my scrambled eggs. Dave. Rita's voice had lost its managed quality. We were only discussing contingencies. Any responsible family. Rita. She stopped. I was awake, I told her. From 10:53 yesterday morning. I heard all of it. I have a notarized sworn affidavit documenting every word of the conversation in this room between you and Wendy. Including the October 12th expiration date, including the Skokie attorney, including the 2 years of waiting. Wendy stood up. I will be outside. She walked out without looking at me. Rita and I looked at each other across the tray table. Not grief, not remorse. The specific expression of someone who has run a calculation carefully and has just learned that a variable was wrong. I am sorry, she said. I believe she meant it, in the way people mean it when they are sorry for the outcome rather than the decision. I know, I told her. Paul closed the folder. Mrs. Allen, I would suggest you contact your own attorney. I believe his office is in Skokie. Rita straightened her coat. She looked at me one more time. Not a farewell, not an apology, something closer to recognition. The look of a person who has, finally and too late, seen the thing they were actually dealing with. Then she left. The complication arrived 40 minutes later. Her Skokie attorney argued the $74,000 in transfers covered legitimate marital expenses. The argument collapsed when the transfer records arrived at 2:30 that afternoon. $39,000 to an account in Wendy's name. $35,000 to a personal savings account in Rita's name alone. No payment to any creditor, no payment to any service provider. Paul filed the dissipation claim at 3:15. The Skokie attorney withdrew the argument by 5 o'clock. I was discharged October 15th. Paul drove me home. The house on Northwestern Avenue was exactly as I had left it on the Saturday morning when everything changed. Mail on the front step, plants needing water. I walked through the rooms. I stood in the kitchen where I had collapsed and thought about a Saturday morning and a woman who had knelt there and called for help. Then I watered the plants. The annulment was finalized in December. The dissipation claim settled in January. Rita moved to Wicker Park. I have not spoken to her since October 10th. If you have made it this far, do us one quick favor, subscribe. A lot of people listen without ever doing it. It costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you, genuinely. Now, the last thing I want to tell you. Greg and Nora came for Thanksgiving. They had been told gently and without unnecessary detail that I had updated my estate documents and the marriage had ended. They did not push for more. Greg arrived with his wife and their youngest, who is 7 years old and has Carol's eyes. Nora came with a pie from a bakery on Milwaukee Avenue that was better than any pie had a right to be. We ate. We watched football. We sat at the table for 3 hours, and at some point the conversation turned to Carol. Nora told me about a road trip she and Carol took when Nora was 19. Just the two of them, all the way up to Mackinac Island and back. Greg told me about the afternoon Carol drove 40 minutes to his first apartment to help him assemble furniture because he had called her in a panic and she had come without asking questions. I told him about the morning Carol woke me at 3 in the morning because she had read something funny and could not wait until a reasonable hour to share it. We stayed at the table until 10 o'clock. It was the best Thanksgiving I had experienced since Carol died. There's a specific thing that happens when people believe they are in the presence of someone who cannot hear them. They say the true thing, not because they are careless. The filter that exists in every human interaction, the layer of performance we maintain when we know we might be answered, that filter is gone. And what emerges in its absence is the actual plan. I lay in that bed for 40 minutes with my eyes closed and heard the actual plan. I am a man who spent 31 years in insurance underwriting, a profession built on one fundamental question: what actually happens as opposed to what people say will happen. The actuarial mind does not concern itself with intentions. It concerns itself with outcomes, with the documented record, with the specific, verifiable, time-stamped evidence of what a person does when no one with any power to respond is watching them. What Rita did, when she believed no one was watching, was discuss a policy expiration date, an estate attorney in Skokie, and 2 years of patient waiting. That is not a contingency conversation. That is a plan. Plans have timelines. Plans have attorneys. Plans reference the number of years they have been running. Here's the practical layer of this story. Update your will. Update your beneficiary designations. Not once, on a schedule, every 2 years at minimum. Sit down with your attorney and review every document that carries your name and your intentions. Ask, does this still reflect what I want? Does this still name the people I trust? Has anything become outdated or exploitable? I had the professional knowledge to know I should have done this. I had the personal grief that made it feel impossible. I allowed those two things to coexist in a way that produced a specific, documented vulnerability. And someone had identified it, researched it, and waited patiently for a window. The lesson is not that everyone who enters your life is calculating against you. The lesson is that the documents are not bureaucratic housekeeping. They are a statement of who you trust and what you have decided. When that statement is outdated, you are not living in the present. You are living in the last moment when you were paying attention. The world does not hold still and wait for you to start paying attention again. When I woke from that coma, the first impulse was to open my eyes immediately, to say, "I heard you. I did not do that." I kept my eyes closed. I kept counting. I let them say everything they were going to say, and I stayed completely still. That stillness was everything. Not because I was afraid, because I understood, in the specific way that a man with 31 years of risk assessment understands, that the value of information is directly proportional to how completely you have it before you act on it. If I had opened my eyes at minute 12, I would have had half a conversation. Rita would have stopped the moment she saw I was conscious. The legal position would have evaporated. Paul would have been managing a very different situation. There is a phrase I encountered years ago and filed away. The older the man, the longer the patience. I understand that differently now. Patience, genuine patience, the kind that comes from a life of sitting with difficult things and waiting for the right moment, is not the absence of action. It is the most precise form of action available. Thanksgiving dinner. 3 hours at the table. Stories about Carol I had never heard before. A 7-year-old with his grandmother's eyes asleep on the couch by 9 o'clock. That was worth every minute of the 40, and I would lie there again, counting seconds with my eyes closed, without a moment's hesitation, to arrive at an evening exactly like it. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered account like this.